speaking of pot stirring, we have tried to keep the Vegas story alive for you folks because there were all these developments, but yet the media just tries to turn a blind eye to it. I haven't seen any news stories in the national news that have really come above the radar recently, but I don't know if you know, last week they released this information. A judge finally released some information that indicated that they had another person of interest other than Stephen Paddock, right? Mm-hmm. And this guy's name was Douglas Haig. And what's interesting about this is Douglas Haig is highly associated with the U.S. Department of Defense, the Pentagon. And he was actually arrested last week on some charges, which included conspiring to manufacture and sell armor-piercing bullets in violation of federal law. Now, the interesting thing for folks to note about this stuff, by the way, is most of these rifle rounds, if they're full metal jacket, are armor-piercing. So it's not a special kind of bullet that they're talking about, but they have bullets within the U.S. military, and I believe it's M855 is the designation, and they've got a steel core, and those are what's typically known as the armor-piercing bullets. Apparently, the bullets that he sold to Paddock were also tracer rounds. Now, the articles that are actually mentioning these things are calling them incendiary rounds, which to a degree, I suppose tracer rounds are somewhat incendiary, but it's not like you're firing a rocket-propelled grenade. So there's no explosion that occurs with a tracer round. It's just as the round is going through the air, that powder on it essentially burns off and creates something that you can see so that you can see where your bullets are going, which I don't know if you remember watching any part of the Vegas shooting, but I never saw any tracer rounds. Did you? I never saw any bullets coming out. I mean, I heard what sounded like gunfire. But
I don't have the eye for it.
No, you would see it.
Really?
No, you can't miss a tracer round.
Okay.
Yeah. No, this is a big deal. It lights up, and you definitely would see it. It looks like Star Wars, the laser beams they shoot in Star Wars.
You see those in battle movies.
Yeah. But I never saw any of those.
No.
Anyway, they found some of this ammunition with this guy Haig's fingerprints on it in the hotel room. Of course, they don't mention any of this to us until now. They arrest the guy last Friday. He also, before he got arrested, had a press conference where he laid all this out, which is great. I just love how, on top of all of this we are. Meanwhile, they tell us there are no other persons of interest, nobody else was involved, etc. And we're waiting to see whether or not and to what degree this guy may have been involved. And of course, in my mind, I think we'll probably never find that out. But I wanted to point out a couple of important things about his background. That he worked for Honeywell Aerospace. And you have to remember, Paddock worked at one point for Lockheed Martin, the Skunk Works, and for NASA, remember? And so this guy was also in the aerospace industry. And interestingly enough, if you go out and you pull his profile off of LinkedIn, you will see that he is was the senior product support engineer for an A-160, which is an unmanned helicopter program, a drone helicopter program. Now, so isn't it curious that the guy whose fingerprints just happen to be on bullets that are found in Paddock's hotel room just happens to be involved in an unmanned helicopter drone program and the manufacture of small arms ammunition? I mean, what a coincidence, right? And he works for the Department of Defense and has a top secret SSBI clearance. He's got a very high level of clearance. He can look at a lot of secret compartmented information. This is somebody who's been very heavily vetted by the Department of Defense, by the Department of Justice, and has been deemed to be somebody that we can trust. And apparently, according to him, sold ammunition to Stephen Paddock, somebody who he just met at a gun show. So the loose ends in the Vegas shooting continue to accumulate because don't we remember that there was more than one person whose stuff was found in Stephen Paddock's hotel room? Remember that guy who we don't hear about anymore, John Beilman?
Was he the one who had a meal with him? Did they ever identify that person?
I don't know that they've ever identified the person who had the meal, okay? I mean, they never have. There's a lot of loose ends that they've never bothered to tie up. But John Beilman, remember they allegedly found his cell phone charger in Paddock's hotel room. Now, the interesting thing is the reason they knew it was his cell phone charger, because that particular kind of charger charges a particular kind of cell phone battery that's only used in military communication systems by the Pentagon. And guess who the lead engineer for that particular communication systems development was? It was John Beilman, the guy whose charger just happened to be found in Stephen Paddock's hotel room. Now remember, he's not a low-level person. He developed that communication system. His house was raided. And then you know what happened the next day? Because this happened, of course, they knew that he was potentially involved by finding a cell phone charger in Paddock's room. His house is raided. The next day, he wheels his 27-year-old daughter, Nicole, who had a rare neurological disorder that rendered her paralyzed and in a wheelchair. He wheeled her out to the backyard of his home, allegedly took a 12-gauge shotgun and shot her in the back of the head, and then shot himself. And it's not clear whether or not he shot himself in the back of the head, because that's what the stories appear to say. And, of course, I haven't seen the coroner's report, and I don't know that anyone has, but, I mean, one could obviously imagine that it would be pretty darn difficult to shoot yourself in the back of the head with a 12-gauge shotgun. You'd have to have some Inspector Gadget arms to do that. But, you know, the loose ends just continue to accumulate in this case. And here we don't have the media talking about any of this. We don't have anybody
the biggest
talking
massacre
about
in United States history.
Yeah, nobody's talking about it. We just pretend like, you know, hey, you know what? It was that crazy guy, Stephen Paddock, and he shot himself. End of story. Nothing to see here, folks.
Moved on to something else. Basically, that's the follow-up is utterly lacking.